talked about, and you mentioned DEI, CRT, all of these globalist policies and trainings that are, and actual like outright demands or conditions that are being placed on not just private businesses, but on government agencies. Did you actually identify what was being fed to you, to your colleagues, that was spurring this sharp change?
Yeah, so well, first of all, I remember even entering the job and being trained to be inclusive with the pronouns. I remember being trained to make sure that all the patients were wearing masks, and if they weren't, that I had to basically force them to wear the masks. At the time when I entered, the COVID stuff was honestly more on my mind. I find them very connected, and there's a huge parallel. I think, like as you said, the fear
Yes.
has now brought on. I honestly didn't think about how when all the lockdowns happened, all the masking and all the the mandates and all that fear, I knew that was going to have long-term repercussions. I didn't realize it meant that we weren't going to understand what a boy and a girl was anymore, and we were going to teach that to all the kids. I didn't realize that was going to be the major fallout from COVID. It seems like that's the case.
How did that go? How do you see that I see it from a very abstract way, but how do you see that? Like, how did that become the natural progression of what we just went through the last 4 years from your professional experience?
I mean, I think the lockdowns is the biggest thing, and the extra screen time that we all had, the isolation.
Wow.
The fact that we were all so isolated, the fact that we were all ripped from. I mean, actually, I'm one of the few people that wasn't, because I was on disability and didn't have a life. But most people were ripped from their daily activities, and I think that's why it didn't affect me as much. Honestly, I didn't get that. I didn't have that sudden jolt of, oh God, now I can't go to work tomorrow because I didn't have a job because I
Mm-hmm.
was disabled. So I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
same impact. But for kids to have to say told that they have to stay home, and they're going to be on Zoom for 2 years in California,
Right.
which is insane. And they weren't therapy. I was actually even though this program was fairly radical, is by the way, it's Sutter Health in San Mateo, California, is where I was.
Yeah.
um, they were actually one of the few programs that did in person, despite they did the masking, they did social distancing, they wiped down every chair like everybody had OCD for a severely mentally ill population. Isn't that great? The therapists were acting more like they had OCD than the patients.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I think all that fear and all that isolation, I think that impacted it. And then I don't know, I guess the globalists, whoever had this agenda, and it was a perfect opportunity to push it onto people, because they were already afraid and they're already isolated. They couldn't push back on the trainings. I realized a lot of the laws and a lot of the curriculums came through around 2021 while we were still locked down,
Mm-hmm.
or just in some states were just
Mm-hmm.
coming out of lockdowns, but they weren't paying attention. Most of schools, I know in California, because I was trying to attend school board meetings, they did not have in-person school board meetings, so that couldn't be monitored. So a lot of those things, they were there before, but they got a lot worse at that point.